Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, Ask Us Nation. We are back in the Lion's Den, live at it again. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We hope you are having a great day. If you guys didn't already kind of notice, we're starting to record our intros after we've done the episode. And basically, it's because we want to hype you up on this episode and let you know what to look for and what to expect. Because each of these episodes has so much value to them. And I know this is a little bit of a different form of content than what you guys are used to, but I promise it is so worth it. Stefan, please back me up. This episode was fire.
This episode has so much, and the word of God is just speaking. And I think that the more that we've been getting used to each other, the way that the Holy Spirit has been able to speak in these episodes has been incredible. So this episode has a lot, and I think you're going to be on fire for God when you listen.
Yeah, we talk about everything shifting into Gideon and the story of the judge Gideon, who is a young boy who is called by God to step out in faith to save Israel from the Midianites. We talk about everything from this idea of like taking care of like what's going on in your own life personally behind closed doors in your own home before the things of this world, kind of the idea of integrity. We talk about the idea of speaking life into other people and how far that can go. And a few other awesome takeaways that we hope that you would be encouraged by, because we're encouraged by it too. So with that being said, Stefan, you ready to jump into this episode?
I'm so ready. Let's go.
Let's do this. All right, guys, we are jumping back into Judges chapter 6. I'm just going to give us a quick recap, and then we'll get going on some of these takeaways, because there's some heat, and not simply because we live in Phoenix, but because the living Word of God is on fire. And it's not because of the design of my really cool Bible. It's literally because it's on fire. It's so good. So anyways... I couldn't do it seriously. All right, so we start off basically with just getting an update on Israel. And basically, like we've talked about in the past, we have what's called the cycle of redemption, right? Where basically Israel goes through this cyclical pattern of doing what is wrong in the sight of God, being handed over to their enemies, living in oppression, crying out for someone to come save them, God sending someone, and then there being peace among the Israelites for a certain amount of time. And so in this one, we start off chapter 6 on a high note. It says, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them over to the hand of Midian for 7 years. Good job, Israel. You really nailed it on the head that time. And so we got Midian oppressing Israel for 7 years, and basically what we see is Gideon kind of is introduced into this chapter. Now, Gideon is one of the more popular, common judges that we hear about. And I don't know what the preconceived notion is that people get. I think that we've kind of come off of this idea of like Gideon was this like really great dude, and like he did all these great things, and he was such a young leader, and he set such a great tone and all that kind of stuff, and like he left a legacy and all those things. And while there might be some truth to that, I think that after you read through the stuff that he does and where he ends up in the end, like you're kind of like, you kind of trashed. So
well, yeah. So like he's okay.
Yeah.
So he starts off. We're going to talk about it. He's kind of fearful. Then he becomes really good, and then he gets super prideful, and he ends on a really bad note. So it's like this. I feel like what we all kind of go through is like we have like this lack of confidence. Then God does something amazing. We kind of credit ourselves with it. And then we end up so prideful and miss out on what God really did. So
yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. I love that. And so, yeah, going from that, we see the angel of the Lord appears to Gideon while he's threshing wheat with a wine press, which is very unorthodox because you would typically not use a wine press for such a thing. But it's because the Midianites have established, and I believe the
Amalekites.
The Amalekites made it a habit or a consistent schedule for them to basically go and just like rob the people of Israel of their land, their animals, any of their produce, and would just take it from them, and they would be left with nothing. And so Gideon, trying to be wise and trying to protect his crops for his family, decides to hide in a barn so to say, and is threshing the wheat there. And from there, it says that the angel of the Lord appeared. And we won't really touch too much into this, but this, for a lot of people and a lot of commentaries, will talk about this idea of like what's called Christophany. And it's basically the idea of seeing examples in the Old Testament of where Christ appeared, or that they believe appeared, as like foreshadowing the coming of Jesus. And so when I read the commentary, I noticed that there was this distinction between in the Old Testament of where places say the angel of the Lord versus an angel of the Lord. So a lot of commentators and theologians speculate that where it says the is referring to Jesus, and where an is just referring to a messenger of the Lord. Stefan has a little bit of a different take on it, but it's not really that important for this because we got some really cool takeaways. But just wanted to throw that out there because I'm sure that might be a question you guys have of like, is the angel of the Lord Jesus? And we can get more into that too in our Q&A session. So throw those questions to us.
Well, even just having that said, if it is Christ or an angel, I think something that is very apparent that we should really look into context on this. So Gideon he's working,
right?
He's like churning this wheat.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at Moses, God speaks to him in the burning bush when he's following the sheep, like he's working.
Yeah.
Then he's talking to the apostles, the disciples, when they're like fishing and they're tending to their nets and they're doing all this stuff.
Yep.
God appears himself to people who are working.
Yeah.
And oftentimes Satan tempts people when they're idle. And I think there's like this powerful thing of like work, like do things, be constantly moving and doing things that produce some sort of fruit. Like it doesn't have to be like you being in the church, but like do something with your hands.
Yeah.
Because that's usually when God speaks to us the most. I feel like I feel like I'm really learning from God is when I'm working out. Like that's when I'm actually like in my thoughts the most. I'm kind of like not talking to anybody, listening to music. I actually work out to worship music and podcasts. I know.
You're weird.
Chasey's like, I can't do that.
How you gonna get that last pump in, bro? When you're like, lead me out in the waters.
It's great, bro. So, but anyways, I feel like when I'm really in those things is when I get the most. So I don't know. That's just something that I really saw in the text is God speaks to those and shows up to those who work.
Which is really interesting because I've seen the opposite preached, where it's like God comes to us when we're in rest and when we're in silence and when we wait upon the Lord. But at the same time, like it's so true. Like don't waste your time sitting around doing nothing, expecting the Lord to show up in your life and do something. Like just start doing something, and he's just gonna from that speak through. And obviously it's not as black and white as it is in the text, where basically like God actually appeared and like the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon. It's not like you're going to be at your cubicle doing accountant work and all of a sudden like the angel of the Lord appears to you and is like, hey, I want you to go to this place. Like that's probably not going to happen. If it does happen, please let us know, because that would be cool to share on the podcast.
Yes.
But more often than not, he's going to speak through God's word. He's going to speak through other people. There's a lot of different ways that we can, sometimes it's the Holy Spirit that puts intuition to us, or it's something that we feel inside. So there's a lot of ways that God can speak to us, but it usually happens more often than not when we're doing something versus just sitting around doing nothing, which is already a phenomenal takeaway. Just be doing something. Doesn't have to be anything super crazy, but like put your hands to use, and, work is a good thing. Mm-hmm. We've done episodes on that in the past about work and that whole controversy of like, I hate work. And it's like, well, work existed before the curse. So we're going to have to change that mindset. But anyway, so Gideon basically is threshing this wheat, and all of a sudden an angel of the Lord appears and calls Gideon to be the judge for Israel, to come and to set them free from the oppression from the Midianites. And Gideon's kind of like, listen, I'm like 12. And you see these twigs, like I know these can take down like bears and lions and gorillas and stuff, but like I don't think I could do this for Israel. I'm totally kidding. He definitely is lacking the confidence that he has what it takes to do what God has called him to do, and so he really hesitates for a little bit. But basically, he appreciates the presence from God and wants to confirm that this is God, and so he goes and he presents an offering to God. And so he brings some meat and he brings some unleavened cakes, puts it on a rock, and basically it gets like torched up. and Gideon's like, all right, confirmed. This is not me hallucinating. Like, this is actually God. And so from there, he's like, what do you want me to do? And the first thing that God calls him to do is to take down the altar of Baal, which is what the Israelites were worshiping at the time. And because of the universal like agreement among the Israelites to worship this pagan god, if you try to do this in the middle of the day, the dude's toast. He's getting thrown out. He's getting stopped. Something's going to happen. He's a one-man army right now, so he's not getting pretty far with that. And so basically he decides to wait until it is night to go out, and he wrecks the statue. And then when morning comes, the people come out, they see the statues down, and they're like, who could have done this thing? And they're like, Gideon did this. And they're basically like, you know, it's the pitchforks and it's Shrek episode 1 all over again. It's like, burn him, put him to the stake. And basically Joash, his father, comes to defend him. And he's like, hey, like, if he feels that God has called him to do this thing, then let the god of Baal come and defend himself. Which there's another parallel to, I believe it's, I don't know if it's Elijah or Elisha, who basically combats against Israel or not Israel, against another tribe and another god, and basically says, like, if your God can defend himself, let him show up. And it's this like God shows up for Elijah and burns this like massive fire on this altar, and the other god doesn't show up, which is really cool. I don't have the reference on hand, but we see common throughout this that God basically is like, your gods won't show up. You think they will, but they won't. But God always shows up. And so basically Joash is like, yeah, let your gods that you worship come and show up and defend themselves. You don't need to be the defense for them. So they basically let him go. And then going from there, he's trying to figure out what he's called to do next. And as he learns that he's, you know, supposed to lead Israel out of this, and he's supposed to take on the Midians, he's kind of doubting a little bit. He's kind of like, I don't know, like, is this really what you want me to do? I'm not 100% sure if this is coming from you or if this is something else. I need a sign. And so he asks for one sign with a fleece, and basically is like, I'm going to leave this fleece out overnight. And I want, I believe the first time around, it's that he wants the laying fleece of wool on the threshing floor. And if there is dew on the fleece alone and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And so he does that, and then it happens, but then he still doubts. And from what I recall reading in commentary, they think that, like, he kind of thought on a logical scale that, like, by the morning time that the dew around could have dried up already, and that the fleece would still be wet. Like, if you put a wet like towel on the floor and like in the Phoenix heat in the morning or whatever, like the stuff on the floor is going to dry faster than the towel. And so he's like, I need another sign. And so he does the opposite. And basically God shows up again. He shows him. And that's kind of the end of the chapter before we jump into chapter 7. And with all of that said, you're probably wondering, what about chapter 5? You guys didn't even do a chapter 5 one. Yes, because it is a music video you can go watch on YouTube. I'm just kidding. Deborah recorded it. No, so given the context and what we've talked about with this podcast, our goal is to really focus on the text and help bring takeaways that are applicable to us in our life that we can actually use on a day-to-day basis. And chapter 5 is really a song of celebration about what Deborah and Barak have done with the assistance of God for the people of Israel. It shares a little bit more details about what they did, but it really is directed to be a song of worship. It'd be like kind of like a psalm, so to say, where it's not as historical narrative as you are reading in the rest of the chapters. And so we just decided, for the sake of kind of the flow of this podcast and what we're doing, this isn't to discredit that scripture and to say it's not worth reading and that it doesn't have anything valuable in it. But we just found that we would just encourage you guys to go read that on your own, and that we're just going to kind of move to chapter 6 and just start with Gideon and stuff. So again, this doesn't mean that we discredit that text and that it's not important or that there's not stuff in there. But when you do read it, it's you don't want to start pulling way too hard at it, trying to find takeaways that don't really exist there. And there really isn't a whole lot that goes into that. It's pretty straightforward about what they did with God's help against the enemy. So with that being said, that's like a pretty long description of the chapter, but with some takeaways kind of in that. But Stefan, there's tons of stuff in here. Like, what's one of the first things that kind of stuck out to you about chapter 6?
Yeah, so this is a huge chapter, and I mean, let's just trudge through this. This is going to be good. So the very beginning, it talks about how the Midianites and the Amalekites, they would come up and they would take all of the crops of Israel. So like once it was ripe, once it was ready, they would come and they would take the animals and the harvest and all this different stuff from Israel. And what this kind of reminded me and brought to light in my life is I'm attacked in the areas that I'm focused on. The areas that are about to have a harvest is usually the areas where I feel the most discomfort or the most attack or temptation to pull me away from those things. And that's why prayer is so important. That we're praying to God of, God, I know this is a good thing. There's about to be a harvest. There's about to be fruit. Protect this person. Like, say if you're ministering to somebody, protect that person's mind, protect the people that they're around so that they're not an influence to pull them away from you. We need to be praying on the offensive. And what we see is Israel ends up turning to God and praying to God once it's too late. Once they've already been stripped of all that's good and the fruit and their animals and they're devastated, they used prayer as a last resource instead of their first resort. And it just stinks. Like that's kind of how we act here too. Is we pray, gosh, God, why aren't you here? Like, why aren't you helping me? Like, why aren't you showing up? Instead of on the offensive of, God, there is so much good that's going on in my life. Protect me, lead me, Holy Spirit, guide me to where I need to be. Be with my wife and my kids and all this different stuff. So I just feel like that very beginning portion is just telling us how important prayer is. It shouldn't be our last priority. It should be our first.
And in the highs and in the lows. Because, I always think of the those movies where it's like, I think we brought this up in another episode too, where it's like a guy or a girl is like stuck in a situation. They're like, God, if you just get me out of this situation, I'll give you my life. I swear. And I just think about that with us too. Like especially in America, I think in a lot of other countries, it's not a problem. Prayer is usually a first resort for them because they connect well on that and it's a lot more prominent. But when you live in the great United States that is capitalism at its finest and where you can go down the street and where there is a huge labor shortage right now where you can basically go get hired anywhere and get a job and you can, go find money and you can go to the grocery store and get food and get all these things. It's like you get in this mindset of like, I don't really need to talk to God. I kind of like got my day going, like I'm doing this on my own. I don't really need him. And so we usually avoid prayer until like we need something from him, like a trophy on a shelf. And it's really unhealthy for our relationship with God. In all honesty, if you actually dated someone and you only ever hit them up, or like a friend and you only ever hit them up when you needed something from them, like you'd probably be a little convicted, like you're kind of taking advantage of this relationship. Like you only hit that guy up because he has like other friends or he has like, knowledge about like cars. I had a friend that was telling me, he's like, dude, I work on cars all the time. And then when friends come back to town, they're always like, yo, bro, we gonna hang out and work on cars together? And he's like, dude, you just want to use me for my tools and my space. Like, no, like I know your intentions behind this. And it's just like, we do that so much with God. We just use him for the times that we need him for something. And then when things are fine, we just avoid him. Yeah.
And you just brought up a good point about how like we go to the grocery store, we get all these different things, but we forget that prayer is also us showing our gratitude and our thankfulness. And so like, in America, we really don't have that many issues and problems, but you still have so much to be thankful for daily. And so if you're not in a habit of just thanking God, it's probably not a good thing either. So
well, and just to add to that real quick, like, and also praying for others because we live in a self-centered culture where it's all about us. So when we come to God, when we need something, it's because it's about us. And even if, life is great for you, doesn't mean life's great for other people. There are always people you can be praying for, friends you can be praying for, family members you can be praying for. There is so much to be focused on with other people and other things going on in the world instead of your own life. So if you think prayer is just about what you can get out of it, like you're horribly mistaken. There is so much more to the relationship than just that.
Yeah, it's interesting that I bring that up because you're talking about how like we don't pray for other people for their success. But whenever we have like issues in our life, we are so quick to blame other people. And so Israel cries out to God and then he sends a messenger and the messenger says, the prophet says, this is what the Lord God of Israel says. This is going to be in verse 8 if you want to follow along. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians. So he first, basically, the prophet, through like God speaking through him, just reminding them how much he loves them.
Yep.
Like, I've already freed you before. I love you. It's always been about love. This relationship has always been about how I care about you. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on and he says, I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites who live in your land. But you have not listened to me. And this just goes back to your point of our selfishness. We are selfish we don't want other people to have success, but when we have failures, then we point the blame. And Israel at the time, they looked at the Midianites and the Amalekites and they're like, they're stealing our crops. They're the problem. But this prophet reminds them that Israel, even though they thought Midianites were the problem, in reality, the problem was Israel. They had stopped following God's voice. They had stopped following what God had told them to do. Mm-hmm. And so often we point blame at, you didn't raise me right, Mom. Like, you weren't there for me. You didn't teach me how to cook. You didn't teach me how to do these things. And now like I'm set back from everybody else. But in reality, it's like, dude, you have YouTube. Like, you can learn how to do those things. And we just point the blame on other people and don't realize that the things that we struggle with is because of us.
Yeah.
Not other people.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. It's kind of like the victim mentality, and usually it's when we face the consequences because of our choices that's when we start to point fingers and think that it's because of something else, but we don't ever look to the root of why that happened. And it's like, God, like, maybe it's blaming family members, and it's just like, well, you guys being divorced raised me in a household where, I never learned what it meant to be in a true relationship with other people. And so like, that's the reason why like I'm miserable and I have all these breakups. And it's like, no, it's probably because you chose an unequally yoked person to be in a relationship with in high school, and you knew you shouldn't have done that, and you should probably just not do that in the future. And so it's always someone else's problem. And like, I don't want to be insensitive to where there is valid blame to other people and other things that go on in life. And absolutely, like, other people can hurt us and harm us and hinder us in our walk of life. And like, there's a lot of validity to those things. But I remember, man, this one story of a woman, and she basically was saying that she like never forgave her father for what she had done. And, he was abusive and like abused her mom and like all these things. And so like her relationship with him was just destroyed basically. And, he was an alcoholic and all those things. Right. And basically lived with this resentment for years and years and years. And, was finally like, maybe I should come back to church. Maybe I should work on my relationship with God, and gets closer to the community there. And the pastor gets to know the relationship she has with her parents and her father specifically. And she basically explains like, I haven't forgiven my father. Like, he's basically hurt me and like, he's done all these things to me. And he basically was like, is there any part of this that you can own? And she's like, no, like, this is 100% on him. Like, he's the one who literally abused my mom. He abused me, like, is an alcoholic, like struck fear in our household, did all these things. Right. And he was like, is there any percentage that you can own? Even if it's 1%, is there like 1% you can own? And she was like, yeah, I guess like maybe 1% of it's on me. And the pastor was like, okay, own that 1%. Like, manage that 1%, and you just own that 1% with everything, and you bring that to him and you apologize for that 1%. And that's all you need to do. And in that relationship, the story goes that the father and the daughter's like relationship, that he, she came to him and expressed that, I'm so sorry for the 1% of what I've done wrong. And basically he just broke down in tears and brought forth the other 99%. And that's all it took, was a little bit of humility and owning your side of things to restore relationships. And so moral of the story is, instead of just blaming people and thinking that it's 100% on them, like, always own your percentage. Figure out what your percentage is and own that.
Yeah, no, there's that percentage that you need to bring, and that we blame others. But I think we also blame something else too. We blame God as well. And in the passage, Gideon actually blames God. So go to verse 13. It says, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied. "But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." And then the Lord just turned to him and said, "Go in strength you have and save Israel out of the Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" And he's like, "What the heck? I'm literally right here in front of you telling you to go. Like, I'm here to save you. Like, I'm doing good." But we blame people and we blame God. But this is the funny thing. Jump to verse 26. Mm-hmm. And it says, he's telling him, Lord's telling Gideon that he needs to build an altar, a proper altar, and to destroy the Ashtaroth, and also the altar of Baal that was built in their area. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting, like Gideon's blaming God for all that's going on, but he has literally in his front yard an altar to another god.
Yeah.
And this pole for Ashtaroth. And like, if you don't know Ashtaroth and Baal, it's pretty jacked up. So in that culture, in Canaanite culture, Ashtaroth was like the mother god. Baal was her son. And if you wanted fertility, you would, they believed that Baal, the son of Ashtaroth, had intercourse for fertility. Mm-hmm. And so what they would do is they would actually have incestual relationships in order to be fertile. Like, that was how they worshiped that god. So it's disgusting. And so this whole chapter 6, what we have to remember is chapter 6 is about God cleansing the tribe of Manasseh. Mm-hmm. Gideon's a part of the tribe of Manasseh. Midianites and the Amalekites, they bind together, and then we see the revival and God getting rid of them in chapter 7. Yeah. But right now, God's cleaning Gideon's home, Gideon's house. And what we learn from this is God cares more, like we have to clean our home before we clean the world. And some of us, we feel like we need to put on a show for the world, and we really don't need to take care of our junk behind closed doors. But God's reverse. God cares way more about what you do in private than what you do in public. Yeah. And here's a great example. Like, you can be so good to your waiter, but you get in the car and yell at your wife. But if you actually treated your wife with respect and love, the way you treated your waiter would have more weight. Yeah. Or you can pray in public, but do you ever pray in the confines of your home? And like what we were talking about earlier, praying for other people and doing these other things. Yeah. And I feel convicted in that. Being a pastor, obviously I pray a lot in public, and I don't mean to make it this public display, but it's just the ratio is just off, and I'm convicted about it. Like, I need to be way more intentional praying with my wife and praying diligently in the confines of my own public space for other people when they come up on my mind, not just when I see them in public and when they're asking for prayer. So
I feel like the word for that we use today would be like integrity, right? Like, what you do in public, do you do also in private? So are you the type where you're with friends and you throw your trash away with them, and then you go and you're on your own and you just throw it on the side of the street? Like, you're the same person inside as you are out. And I think a more relatable way we might think of this is I thought about this in my own life, honestly, and it's really convicting, is throughout like middle school and high school, I used to go to school and I'd be like super friendly with people and like super smiley and like do all these things, be like, yeah, like, you know, life's good, whatever. And then I get home and I would treat my family like crap. Like, I would disrespect my mom. I would disrespect my dad. I would be mean to my brother. I would just have like passive tone. I wouldn't listen to the things they told me to do. Like, the list goes on. But basically I was like, I don't have to listen to you guys. Like, I'm better than this. I'm bigger than you guys. All this kind of stuff. But like, then I go out in public and I'm acting like this perfect goody two shoe guy that's got my life together and that everything's great. But like, behind closed doors, I'm treating my family like crap.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. So we just got back from church camp, from high school camp, and buses are dropped off. Everybody's hyped. We had our last day. And this kid, he's... It's funny you say this because it's like literally you when you were a kid. So he had like the best week ever. He's off the bus. He's hype. And then his mom walks up and he instantly like demeanor changes. I'm tired. She's like, how was your week? He's like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I need to go home and sleep. And it's
Where
just
are my
like,
pizza rolls?
seriously. And it's just like, it's so true how we can just have different personalities depending on who we're around.
Yeah.
And the people I'm really gravitated towards are the people that I know what I expect from them.
Yeah.
Like, I know exactly what I'm going to get when I have a conversation from that person, or when we meet up. I know exactly how I'm going to feel afterwards.
Yep.
What we're going to talk about. I'm never going to feel gross. Like, you have that friend where today, are we going to gossip a ton? Like how is this going to go? We know. So anyways.
Yeah. So the takeaway is, like, if you got problems in your own house, so to say, analogy, in your own house, like, you need to work on those before you try to work on anything on the outside, which just goes to show, like, everything that Jesus proclaimed, right? He talks about how it's more than just about action. It's about heart, right? The idea of, like, murder versus hatred, and how, like, hatred in your heart is the same as murder. Like, God sees beyond what other people see, right? He sees to the heart. But he also talks about, or James, I believe, talks about that I think it's Jesus. He talks about, like, if you have a brother who, you have trouble and quarrel with, and you're at the synagogue, like, leave the synagogue before making an offering to God and go make amends with that person. And, like, the same applies for us. Like, if you got problems in your own life and you got things you got to figure out, like, what are you out here in the streets doing? Like, you need to go figure those things out before you continue with your life and whatever else you're doing on the outside. Like, you need to fix those things on the inside first.
Yeah. So this actually kind of is brought up. So verse 29. So this is after Gideon and his 10 servants, they go and they strip down the altar and they do all this stuff. In verse 29, it says, they asked each other, who did this? When they carefully investigated, they were told, Gideon, son of Joash, did it. And so other versions, Remy, read your version real quick, verse 30. 29.
And they said to one another, who has done this thing? And after they had searched and inquired, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Yeah,
exactly. So it's just, it kind of makes us assume that it was really quick, that they were just kind of, it's Gideon.
Yeah.
And Gideon doesn't come out and say, I did it. They just assume it's Gideon after their investigation. And it kind of brings to light what we were just talking about of what would people assume of you. Like, I've been in this situation before where someone will come up to me and be like, hey, I heard this about you. And I instantly know in my heart they were talking to so-and-so because that person thinks that way of me.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, that was what came out of that person's mouth, Mm-hmm. And so you know people that have that reputation of being a gossip. You have that person that has the reputation of doing this, that, and the other. What's your reputation? Like, if someone heard something of you, would they believe it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just read this and I think, man, Gideon was known to be the person that was willing to strip down their idols and their gods. Am I that kind of person that would be known to fight for the things that are right?
Yeah.
Am I a person that is known to do good? So if someone said something about me in a positive light, would people believe it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Stefan is that kind of person.
Yep. Well, I think that, a more relatable example to, like, high schoolers and college students is the idea of, like, showing up on the party scene. So there's a lot of parties that happen during high school, and nothing good happens at parties, right? You're either getting drunk or you're pushing the boundaries with someone, or things are just leading to sin in one way or another, right? And so if, you're the type of person that doesn't go to those parties, if a rumor starts that, like, you were at a party, they're probably not going to believe it. They're going to be like, no, like, Stefan doesn't show up to parties. Like, whatever. I don't know who told you that, but, like, that dude, he'd be at, like, a worship session or something like that. He's not there. Or it'd be like, oh, that he, like, was making out with this one chick. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, that dude, no, he's not even close to focus on that right now, just because, like, their demeanor and who they are. And I just remember that was something that was, like, for me, is I remember one time, and this kind of, like, it kind of sucked because I was hoping it wouldn't be the response, but there was one party I did show up to. My friend was like, we should go show up at this. And I was like, you know what? I never showed up to one high school party. I just want to walk the scene. See, how close is this to actual, like, what they show in, like, TV shows and movies? And I show up, and the amount of looks that I got from everybody there, they were like, why is he here? Because they knew that I was, like, someone who was, like, professing of my faith, and I was pretty bold about it everywhere I went, and was involved with all the leadership stuff and everything. And so when they saw me, they were kind of like, I don't feel comfortable with you here. Like, why are you in this space? You know? And so that's just like what it makes me think of is, like, what kind of example and posture do you set before others so that when things rise, you know, it's the idea of being beyond reproach, that if, you set yourself up for a situation where someone can accuse you of something and like you were kind of involved in that, like, don't do those things. Like if you believe that you showing up to a party is going to cause you to be at risk of someone like throwing out a rumor that like you got drunk and wasted, why are you at the party in the first place? Don't show up to the party.
Yeah, I just sat down with a high school student. We just got back from camp, and he was kind of telling me he's nervous about how, man, he really wants to be on fire for God, but if he stops going to parties, he's going to lose those friends. If he stops engaging in some social circles, then he's going to lose like a girlfriend or whatever it is.
Yep.
And sometimes we're so focused on the now and who we are today, but like we lose focus on what God is speaking to us in the future. And I think that this text kind of brings into that.
Yeah.
So go for it, Remy.
Yeah, no, 100%. So what's really cool is you go back to verse 12, and it says, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him, to Gideon, and said to him, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. And Gideon said to him, please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us, right? Whatever. And then basically the Lord calls him and says that like, I want to like set you apart from everyone else to be the judge for Israel. And Gideon basically tries to reject it. He's like, I don't know if I am what you call me for these things are. Like, I'm not that strong. Like, I'm not like the leader of this household. Like, I'm the lowest of the lows. Like, I don't think that I'm the right guy for this job. And, of course, God ignores what they said because he's like, no, I told you that you're going to do this. I'm speaking life into you. And we see the exact same parallelism with Jesus and Peter. And we see how Jesus spoke into Peter when he was Simon, right? And at this time, like Simon was, you know, he was, Jesus knew that he was going to betray him multiple times. He knew that he was going to doubt him on the water. And basically, regardless of those things, said that, you know, I'm going to build my church upon you and I'm going to call you Peter, which is the rock. And upon this rock, I will build my church. And it's honestly a beautiful thing. And I want to give you guys an analogy to think about with this that has always stuck with me. So with a plane, right? A plane is let's say we're flying from LA, California to let's say Miami, Florida. Okay. And even though it's a direct line from LA to Miami, there's always crosswinds that pilots have to account for when they fly. And so when they are trying to figure out the exact direction to go, they don't just go in a straight line to where their location is. They usually will head north of wherever it is so that as they're going straight, that crosswind will kind of push them perfectly into where they're going. But if they're a few degrees off, they could be so far away from their destination and it could completely throw them off course. And it's really fascinating because if you were to draw a diagram of this, you kind of have 3 points, right? So you have your center point of your location in LA and you have Miami, and the angle that you go is above, right? So you're going above the actual destination. You're heading towards, let's say like North Carolina, but it's going to kind of bring you down with that crosswind. And then you have the actual point of destination. But then if you go off course by a few degrees, you kind of land way beneath it. And so here's the principle. If you treat people for how they are to you, they will be less than what they could be. But if you treat people for what they could be, they will land it exactly at who they should be. And so like when we see people acting with behavior that is wrong or that is not like them, or they might not understand quite yet that like this isn't the way you should be, instead of just focusing on the negatives and like you do this wrong, you do this thing wrong, you do that thing wrong, if you focus on like, hey, you're really patient with people and that's really awesome. Or hey, you're really good at like leadership. Like you're really good at like taking charge in these situations. Or, hey, like you're a really hard worker. Like, I just want to like encourage you in that, in those aspects. And what happens is that like, as you speak that into them, they continue to live that thing out and they run with that thing. And they it's almost like a self-prophecy, and not in a sense where like you like the weird like prosperity gospel stuff where it's like, you're rich, like think about your house and like envisioning that kind of stuff to happen, like manifestations. It's more in the sense of speaking life in other people because this is biblical and this is what Jesus did and this is what God clearly did in the situation. Like Gideon wasn't a man of valor at this time. He was hiding from the Midianites and behind closed doors using a wine press to thresh his wheat. The dude was afraid and he was a coward. Like he couldn't stand up for himself if he was in public. And on top of that, like he didn't take down the statue in the middle of the day. He did it at night. And like you just constantly see that like he wasn't living up to that man of valor character, but God still spoke that into him because you will see as we go through these chapters that he does live up to those things. And I just want that to be an encouragement to us that with other people in our life, like just speak life into them. Even if they're treating you wrong or they're treating you for what you're not, just speak life into them. Just speak what they could be. And I promise that they will land with where they should be.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add one thing to that. You have no idea how little life is spoken into people.
That's so
I
true.
can't tell you how many times I've said just a simple thing of like, I think you're great. And someone been like, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
You think that about me? I'm thinking specifically of this one kid. And this last week, I just gave him a big hug and was just like, dude, you're an amazing kid. I seriously love hanging out around you. You have such a cool future. And he wrote me this massive letter about how his dad has never said to him of something positive.
Wow.
Of like that he sees good in him. His dad only tells him all the negative, that how he was a mistake and how he'll never live up to what he thought a boy should be and all this stuff. And you just don't, I think we withhold compliments because we feel weird about it, but you have no idea how little someone's complimented ever.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I can speak on behalf of myself. Whenever people do speak life into me, we're usually quick to like throw away compliments and be like, oh, whatever. Yeah, not that big of a deal. But in reality, it's like more often than not, we don't get that spoken into us, but with like a genuineness. Sometimes we can just kind of say things to kind of say things and we're like, oh, thank you, whatever. But if you're like, no, seriously, like look at me in the eyes. Like you are amazing. Like you are an awesome person. You're a stud, all those kind of things. And that was honestly something you did for us in our high school group, is like, you just constantly were just like eye contact to the point where you're just like, dude, you're a stud. And that like resonated with all the guys. And we're just like, hell yeah, we're a stud, bro. Like, let's go live this out. And we're like going to school and we're like doing mission work and like trying to reach people and do all that stuff. It's like, we're studs, man. But like, if we were told that like, dude, you're a sinner, like, dude, you're a failure. Your mistakes define who you are today. Like, bro, you're not good enough. You're not these things. All those lies that we already are feeding ourselves. Like we already do it enough to ourselves. We all beat ourselves up way too much. Like we don't think about that. And then on top of that, you add in that no one else speaks life into us. We don't realize how far a simple compliment goes. And so even just the little things, just speak little life, just the quickest little compliments, but just like with genuineness, like not just doing it because you feel like you're obligated to or whatever, but like with a genuine heart, share those things with those around you. You might feel a conviction. The Holy Spirit might lead you to a certain person. You might be praying and all of a sudden you get a random thought about someone. You're like, well, that was weird. Like, no, it wasn't weird. Like God put that person on your heart for a reason. Like maybe you need to reach out to them. And if anything, just speak life to them. Let them know like, you know, hey man, like I've been seeing the stuff you've been doing. You're on fire for the Lord. I just want to commend you for that. You're killing it. Keep up the good work. That kind of stuff just like lights people on fire. From my personal experience too. So I love that. There is so much in here, but chapter 6, dude, it's so awesome. I swear every chapter gets better than the last one.
It does.
It's so good.
Number 7 is going to be a banger.
Oh, you guys just wait and see. All right, guys. Well, I'm sure we could talk about so much more, but we are capping it on time. So we hope you loved this episode. If you did, go ahead and share it with your friends and your family. Share it on social media. If you haven't actually left us a review on like Spotify, we would love if you guys did that for us. It's just a quick little button. You just press the star thing and you just rate it. That would just help us to get our content to other people. But other than that, if you want to support us, you can head over to our shop at askasushop.com. Check out our newest drops. Check out our latest designs that are going to be dropping pretty soon. That is the best way to support us in the ministry that we're doing. We have so many plans for things in the future of what we want to do. And man, if we can get there a little bit faster, be some crazy cool things. So anyways, we love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. And we hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your week. We love you. Peace out.
Peace out.